What is happening out there, rotoscouts baseball fans? Welcome to a Wednesday show, gang. Happy hump day. Middle of the week already. Can't believe how quickly these weeks go by between NFL Sundays. Not enough time to get everything done. But we got some baseball to talk about. Good first day of the playoffs yesterday. Some hard-fought games. Some low-scoring contests kind of early on, and then that Mets game got a little bit, got the offense rolling a little bit, but definitely some playoff October-style baseball early. Hopefully you guys enjoyed it. Know we had Clintwood had a profitable day. Dropped a message into chat. He also hit me up on Twitter a little while ago. Good stuff from Clintwood. Turned $90 into 500 yesterday. Not too bad. Saying if Valdez didn't choke, yeah, Framber had a rough one. Might have been more, but won't complain. Gotta love it. Good stuff, Clintwood. Congrats if you're still here, bud. Lone Wolf's here. No, Lone Wolf had some chasers at least with that Mets and Brewers stack that we talked about. And Lone Wolf was playing a lineup in the 2-game slate that he bounced off me in our Discord. Always feel free to ping me with lineup thoughts. But no, we had a stack of the 2 good pitchers and then some Mets and Brewers in that one. Don't know if it got there, don't think it did, but know that it was at least competitive. I had some competitive ones myself. Felt a little bit short, but it was a good day. Going right back to it today. Woke up feeling a little bit like bleh today, though. Not sure if you can tell. Feeling a little like, I don't know, not sick. My stomach just doesn't feel like totally great today. Just feeling a little bit like bleh. So, if I come across low energy, that's why. But we got a good slate to talk through again today. Another October-style board as far as Vegas is concerned. Really low-scoring game at the end of the night tonight. 6.5 runs between the Pods and the Braves. 7.5 in all 3 of the other games. Everything's pretty close. Everything is pretty low scoring. 4.29 implied runs for the Astros leads the entire slate. So very much October baseball on tap today. That first game up, we've got Hunter Brown on the hill for the Astros, relegating the Frisky Tigers, who got to Framber for a couple of runs. Not a crazy breakout game yesterday, but a couple of runs. Like we talked about through yesterday, some low-scoring events on a short playoff slate can absolutely make a difference. So Hunter Brown on the hill for the Astros. He looks pretty solid. One of the top options on the entire slate. Some strikeout upside for sure in that Tigers lineup for him to chase. 3.30 implied total for Detroit. Going back the other way, a 4.30 implied total. The Astros leading the slate. They're going up against a combination of Tyler Holton as an opener, pretty effective reliever, multi-inning reliever throughout the year. Through 90-some-odd very effective innings, high strikeout pitcher. Capable of giving us 3, probably looking at 2 inning and change, 2 innings. And then he's going to hand off to Reese Olson. Olson's going to give us multi-innings, probably 3 or 4 in bulk relief. And then we'll hand off to the rest of the bullpen the rest of the way. I've got them both in the pitching projections right now, just so you can see the opener follower of it. Obviously, Olsen a little bit diminished by the follower role. The reliever not going to get enough at the front end. But definitely both talented enough. Olsen's good enough to limit the Astros over a few innings. Might be worth some consideration. Next game up, the Royals at the Orioles. 3.44 implied total for Kansas City going up against Zach Eflin. Seems like a pretty playable spot on both sides. And then Seth Lugo on the hill for the Royals. Lugo pitched basically through the entire season, pitching above his head. Did pretty well. Only a couple of clunker spots in there. Is definitely one of the more targetable spots on the slate, though. You can see the Orioles popping up to a 4.15 implied total on the board. Definitely some appeal there. That interesting, powerful Baltimore lineup. Looking to get engaged with that one. A lot of bats we like on the other side from Kansas City. A little bit of a 4 corners game, in my opinion, in that one, though. We could definitely consider either one of those pitchers. We definitely consider bats on both sides. Somebody asked in the Discord which game, if we're going to target for showdown, would be the most interesting. And I said Mets Brewers. And I think that is the case. Close game there. not the highest runs, but solid run totals on both sides relative to the full slate. So I thought that would be the most interesting showdown. I think the Royals and Orioles is potentially the second most interesting of the showdown slates. KC just came out. Great. I'll grab it. Houston too. I will grab that in 1 sec. Give me 1 second. I'll be right back. Back in business. So the cat popped his head, and I realized I'd forgotten to wrangle him and put him in the other room, and I didn't want him diving on the table, knocking the coffee over, and ruining the entire thing. So let me grab that KC lineup while I'm talking. So the Mets and the Brewers is the most interesting game, I think, for stacking purposes. Mets going up against Frankie Montas. Brewers going against Sean Manaea. I like the looks of Manaea, high strikeout pitcher. Have never trusted Frankie Montas, but obviously we saw him perform fairly well in a couple spots down the stretch, but we also saw him give up a bunch of runs down the stretch. It's the best the Brewers are going to be able to offer today, but definitely interested in some Mets bats again. I think they're going to be frisky coming right back. They've been red hot. Not that hot is a thing that we're chasing, but definitely a productive lineup with a lot of good bats going up against a very gettable pitcher there. 3.71 implied total on the New York side, 3.88 implied total on the Brewers side. And then Atlanta and San Diego to round things out. Solid pitching matchup there. Joe Musgrove, Max Fried toward the end of the night. 3.21 implied total for Atlanta. 3.37 implied total for the Pods. Musgrove and Fried, two high-end pitchers. Fried probably I don't want to say safer, because it's a really tough, challenging Padres lineup that's been rolling. Had a good day yesterday. Has a lot of power. But between the two, Fried does tend to be the guy who keeps the ball down a little bit more, limits runs a little bit more. But Musgrove was very solid down the stretch, finished strong with 3 6-inning starts, high strikeout outings. So definitely some arms to consider there, and Musgrove actually tops the slate in our projections today, because there are a lot of strikeouts for him in that Braves lineup. So at 10.5, Musgrove, a worthy investment, but just a big ticket item compared to the entire slate on FanDuel. 8,000 on DraftKings, kind of a different story. That slots in quite a bit better. I think that's highly, highly playable. He should be absurdly popular at that price. Him and Fried should be the most highly owned. If it's not him and Fried, then it's him and Hunter Brown against Detroit. At 8,300, that makes a ton of sense to me. Tons of strikeout upside for both of those pitchers. I think it's a dynamite pairing. It lets you buy a ton. There's a lot of purchasing power today on DraftKings, with Max Fried at 87 being the most expensive pitcher. Fried just a little bit challenged by the low strikeout nature of that Padres lineup. He's not the highest strikeout pitcher on his own anyway, just more of an innings eater, somebody who's very, very good at keeping the ball down. And I don't mean innings eater as like a bad thing. I mean like he's capable of pitching deep into games and being very, very good. He's, if we're picking somebody on the board who's going to throw a complete game shutout, Max Fried is probably your guy. But the strikeout downside is real in that game. Lugo matched up against the Orioles, just a challenging spot, but again, Lugo has pitched well all season. I do continue to think he's pitching above his head, but he has gotten away with it, and he's not untalented. Like, I just think he's a little bit worse than the reality is a little bit under what the current performance is. But definitely has made it work and talented enough to make it work once again. 94.85, not unfairly priced, but a little bit higher in that spot against the Orioles than I'd like to pay. I'd rather go to one of the top three pitchers. Manaea at 91.82, kind of interested there. Again, the Brewers gettable. Manaea high strikeout and pitching deep into ball games. Probably just going to look at 5-6 innings and hand off to the bullpen. But was giving them 6 or 7 regularly down the stretch of the season. So really interesting spot from Manaea today. Mets with a big win in game 1. Looking to put it down early. So right guy on the mound. Interesting game for New York. Both sides for New York. Eflin against KC, 8,700, 7,500. Not a pitcher I fully trust by any means, but definitely interesting price-wise. Capable on the mound, could find some strikeouts, but that is a very low strikeout, very dangerous Kansas City lineup. Frankie Montas, the Brewers, again, I mentioned probably the biggest target on this slate. 8,300, 7,200. Did pop that big strikeout game down the stretch, had a couple of effective outings, but also had one of his last 3 games was a 7-run meltdown. There's a lot of bad in with the okay with Frankie Montas. Reese Olson, again, coming in as the bulk reliever, or the scheduled bulk reliever anyway. Tyler Holton is making the start, but we're probably getting an inning, maybe 2, with a max of 3 out of Holton. He hit 3 a couple times during the year, but most of the time we're looking at 2. 64, 68 for him. He projects out for that salary at the bottom, not really all that well. I don't feel like that's a good, bargain fit. If he was a $4,000 opener, maybe we'd consider it on DraftKings. Really don't think there's going to be enough meat on the bone, particularly because it does have good strikeout stuff. But if you're coming in against the top end of that Astros lineup, it is a bit of a diminishment as far as the strikeout stuff goes. Olsen, a little bit easier to consider because you've got, the idea of at least multiple innings. You've got the idea of coming in the bulk relief role and taking a shot at the win if they're able to get it today. So a reasonable spot for Olsen. If you have belief in the Detroit lineup, potentially getting to Hunter Brown, and I actually have a little bit myself today. I know I talked down about them yesterday against Fromber, and they came through for a couple of runs. I like the upside a little bit more than that for scoring today from the Detroit team. So, a little bit interesting on all sides there. But let's dive in. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe. If you haven't already checked it out, rotoscouts.com, all the projections, the rankings, pitching projections, hitting projections, all that good stuff is up on the site. Check out our pals over at acemine.io. Use promo code rotoscouts, all in caps, to get 20% off your first month over there. And when you get to when you're at Rotoscouts, make sure you're checking out our new membership plans. Every single Rotoscouts plan is under $1 a day. Gives you access to every single sport, every single tool that we cover, or other way around, every single tool for every single sport that we cover. Your only decision as far as signing up is which plan you're going to get, which term you're going to get, weekly, monthly, quarterly. A little bit of a variation in your daily price point if you're going on one of the terms, but each plan accesses every single piece of content. Each plan is the same as far as what you get, just a matter of what you can pay, how it fits your bankroll, your budget, and your plans. So check that stuff out. Really appreciate everybody who signed up already. Off to a very good start. Very encouraged to buy it. So really appreciate you guys. Definitely makes the 18 months of doing it for nothing feel good and feel like it was the right decision. So I appreciate you. So first game up, Tigers get a little bit better version of the Tigers lineup out of the gate today with all the lefties in it against Hunter Brown. Brown very good through the season though. 170 innings in 30 starts. He put up a 3.49 ERA, a 3.47 xFIP, 25.1% strikeouts, 8.4% walk rate. Not bad by any means. Very good at limiting premium contact, very good at limiting power. Limited launch angle to 9.6 degrees. 2.53% home runs on 30.3% hard hits, 86.2 miles an hour of exit velocity. Hunter Brown was terrific this year. Really took a strong step as a young pitcher. 8,300 is very, very cheap up near the top of the board. He's facing a lineup that has 24.9% strikeout for the season. Again, this is the more dangerous version of the Tigers lineup. Riley Green's very good. Parker Meadows is pretty good. Kerry Carpenter's an elite lefty power hitter. They're interesting bats on the Detroit side. This is not a safe start for Hunter Brown, but what he does well should hit the Tigers right in what they're looking to do. So it is a good-looking opportunity for him to go out, put up a solid start here. Projects as one of the top options on the board. I like them for the money. I assume he's going to be one of the more popular starters, if not the most popular at that price. He's actually outpacing Verlander. Verlander not even on the roster. He's actually outpacing Joe Musgrove in RG's ownership numbers. I question that. I think Musgrove probably beats him out, considering he's 300 less against Atlanta. I have a feeling Musgrove wins out in that spot. Everybody just watched Michael King strike out 12 of those Braves last night. I think that feeds that beast a little bit, but mostly on the price. Both of those pitchers and both of those guys together, though, again, Musgrove there, Hunter Brown there, pretty easy to just put that together and figure out bats from there. So that'll be a highly owned combination. Good boy. Keep it down, huh? There's no reason for you to be licking the side of your bed. Let me put you in lockdown too. Tyler Holton, 68, 64 across sites. Again, we're dealing probably with just 2 innings. There's a note, at least his FanDuel blurb has a note about how many times he went 3 through the season. I think it was 3 times in like 90 some odd innings. I only cut for sanity's sake, I cut like the July forward game log. Not that we're going through all these relief appearances. But he went 3 on August 17th against the Yankees, faced 10. Gave up 1 hit, struck out 2. Kind of a mediocre performance out of him. He's got a lot more appearances along the lines of inning and a third against Oakland, faced 4 hitters, gave up a unearned run, but struck out 3. 2 innings, faced 7 hitters, struck out 4, walked 1. A lot of those kind of performances. Overall for the season, it amounted to a 21.8% strikeout rate against a very high-quality 4.8% walk rate, so a very, very strong strikeout-to-walk ratio for the pitcher. 2.19 ERA with a 3.68 xFIP. You can see a little bit of betrayal of the extremely nice ERA. If we're piling a little bit more innings on top, this probably goes up into this kind of territory, but a way sub-1 whip. He was excellent at keeping runners off of the bases, excellent at limiting opportunities all season, very good at inducing weak and medium contact, reasonable 11.4 degree average launch angle, so moderate trajectory, weak hits, weak exit velo, 5.5% barrels, reasonable expectation that the home run rate would stay around that kind of territory over more innings. Just an 82 by Stuff Plus. Measurements don't really love the way that the ball travels through space and time. Got to check out, I haven't dug into them yet, but some of the new StatCast arm angle tracking now. Kind of like what they did with the swing stuff earlier in the season. They've done with arm angle now for pitchers. Some of the data is amazing. It's just going to completely change the way we think about some of these arms. But that's Holton. So this is how the Astros align against Holton. If you take a look there. And then what we can do is that. And this is Olsen. And that's how the Astros look against Olsen. Or did it click over yet? I guess it did. So Astros look pretty similar either way. They don't really see that big a diminishment lefty-lefty. This version of the lineup, they have basically their everyday lineup. They weren't scared to have Jason Hayward in there with the lefty on the mound. Obviously, these two guys not going to come out. Astros came so close to winning that game yesterday, by the way. Looked different on the scoreboard, but Jason Hayward hit approximately a 250-mile-an-hour line drive at the first baseman, right at the first baseman, with 2 runners in scoring position that would have tied the game in the 9th. But crushed it. That's what Hayward still does. 41.3% hard hits this year. Just moderate output down toward the bottom of the lineup, but still a solid player. But Olsen for 68, 8,000 does make things work salary-wise, does make things work on FanDuel salary-wise. Just a moderate projection, just an expectation. I gave him 3.5 innings. I think that's appropriate. He had been, if you remember, on the injured list for a long stretch there. He's been back for 3 outings now. 2 1/3, 3 innings, and 4 innings. 3 strikeouts in each appearance. First one, he gave up 4 runs on 4 hits. Second one, 1 run on 1 hit. Third one, 2 runs on 4 hits. So moderately effective coming back, just trying, kind of working his way into form, but that's not ideal to throw at the Astros in a playoff game. 3.53 ERA on the season, 3.72 xFIP, 21.7% strikeout rate over 112 1/3, 22 starts, 12.7% swinging strike rate, 28.2% CSW. Olsen was good, very good to start the season. Ran into a couple of blips along the way. Hit a couple really rough spots early in June. But overall, had a pretty strong season. It's just the limitation of innings plus the very low strikeout, high danger opponent. Just puts a little bit of a tarnish on the play. Coming in out of the bullpen as the bulk reliever, you have an angle to the win. You're obviously not getting your quality start bonus on FanDuel. You're probably looking just around these median projections, maybe a little tiny bit more. But not a lot of meat on the bone. Could have been cheaper on both sides. So even as a value play, you're really going to have to drill the right bats. It's an angle, but it's an angle from which it's difficult to kind of pull up and recover your, upward momentum to the top of the standings. On the Detroit side, Parker Meadows, left-handed, 4,000, 3,100. If you were here yesterday, by the way, a lot of the stats going to be, kind of the same. I'm not going to go through, at least not for the first, day, 2 days of playoffs, and put just the day-by-day playoff stats in here. So we're just talking about what these guys did for the season, and we'll talk about the players in general. But, a lot of this is going to be some repeat info. So my challenge is to say it in different ways, which is always interesting. So Meadows, limited as far as the power of his premium contact, 7.1% barrels, 31.1% hard hits. Got on at just a 310 clip over 298 plate appearances as a rookie. 111 WRC plus, though, not bad as a run creator. Got involved late through their run. Definitely took a step forward later in the season. He's an interesting left-handed bat. 9 home runs, 9 steals. As a cheap piece to start things off for correlated scoring with Kerry Carpenter, Matt Vierling, Riley Green, and the hitters that we actually like in this lineup, Meadows definitely in play. He's a little higher strikeout than he ought to be, a little bit lower walk than he ought to be to do what he needs to do on this team. But there's definitely talent there, multi-category contributor for sure. Kerry Carpenter, again, very real power upside. I made him the home run pick of the day at 9.54 in the home run model, even against Hunter Brown and his good ability to check power and limit it. It's the playoffs. Power is so hard to come by anyway. No issues with going against Hunter Brown here, and I really like Kerry Carpenter's bat. As soon as he came back from injury, I said, hey, this is one we got to keep our eye on. He had 18 home runs in 296 plate appearances. He had a 3.03 ISO, not a 2.03, a 3.03 ISO in that 296 plate appearances. 16.9% barrels, 45.1% hard hits. Not even a huge strikeout guy. It's a high strikeout rate of 25.3, but it's not, not 30 plus. That is a very good bat. 345 on base too, 160 WRC plus. Knows how to draw a walk, not the highest walk rate. 7.4%, though not bad. Carpenter is just flat out good. Vierling, I wouldn't say is flat out good, but had a decent year. Finished at a 108 WRC+, so a very positive run creator. Was reasonable as far as, limiting strikeouts, drawing some walks, 21-3, 7-2, puts you right around the averages. 7.5% walk rate, just under a 40% hard hit rate. Came away with 16 home runs, 6 stolen bases. He's like the definition. This is across the board. Across the board. Matt Vierling is essentially like, I would imagine that these are all right around replacement level numbers this year. Outside of the 8% above average. So stuff in here won't be right at replacement level. But this is the definition of just an average role player. But he's in a great spot in the lineup. Multi-position at third and in the outfield. Under 4,000 on DK plays. 3,000 on FanDuel plays. Riley Green, way more interesting. 4,800, 3,200. Their star bat. 24 home runs in 584 plate appearances. He's under 5,000 on the DraftKings slate. He's 3,200 on FanDuel. He's so easy to afford. 26.7% strikeouts, but it comes against 11% walks. Got on at a 348 clip for the full season. Creator runs 35% better than average. A 217 ISO. Kind of the cog in the machine as far as this offense goes. Definitely an interesting hitter for those prices. 7.53 in the home run model today. Not a bad option at all. Colt Keith, a 3.64 in the home run model, had a good but underwhelming rookie year. Came in a little bit low on, a little bit short of expectations, at least that some of us had for him. As a really interesting young left-handed power bat coming up to take second base over. Definitely still interesting in all of those aspects, and finished with a strong year in a lot of things that I care about. 19.8% strikeouts as a rookie. Very, very good. Had a 380 slug is not good. A 120 ISO is not good. 97 WRC plus. Would have liked to have seen that creep up to the at least league average 100 level. The 260 average on the front side. Reasonable ability to put bat on ball, though. Finished at just 5.6% barrels and 35% hard hits, but had good stretches of putting bat on ball with better quality than that. So there was a lot through the year that I liked, even though it doesn't necessarily round into a great stat line. From a young player, and again, a young, affordable lefty bat at second base, most specifically at second base, with a strong track record of power through the minors and regarded universally as a high-end lefty power bat. Definitely interested in Colt Keith for cheap at second base in my Tiger stacks. Torkelson at 37.26 had a miserable season. 10 home runs, 155 ISO, 92 WRC plus were the strong points. Everything else was bad to worse, or worse. Those numbers aren't great over 381 either. He was much, much better after his recall after the demotion, though. Very famously got sent back down. Hit more than 30 home runs last year. I know I've pointed that out yesterday, but it needs to be said. Had a good second year last year. Kid was the first overall pick for a reason. Showed it to us last year and then took it away this year. But if you're buying on Tigers, to me that means you're also buying on Spencer Torkelson. Especially at these prices. 37.26. That's very, very cheap for the potential. He still hits the ball pretty hard. Or is still capable of hitting the ball pretty hard. Last year, 14.1% barrels, 50.5% hard hits. This year, amid all the struggles, it dipped to 6.7% barrels, 39.3% hard hits. There's still upside there. 4.34 in the home run model. Again, if you're going to Tigers, you're a buyer at least, especially anyway on the 5-player site. If you want to leave him out of some four-man stacks on FanDuel, you do have enough to work with. That I think that makes sense. In a 5-man on DK, I'm really not leaving Torkelson behind that many times. McKinstry at 25-24 at least fills multiple positions, including second base on both sites. But we're talking about a player with a 277 on base, 25 points below average for run creation, 16 steals. If you just want to chase the AJ Hunch of it, AJ Hinch is very, very good with those hunches and putting players into the right spots and players into the right nonsensical. We talked about one of them with what's-his-face hitting cleanup yesterday. Just some weird lineup decisions. He's AJ Hunch, but it tends to work. So McKinstry along those lines, maybe you can get there. Trey Sweeney is more interesting. 32-27, 4 home runs, 2 steals in 119 plate appearances. was a high-end prospect, went from the Yankees to the Dodgers in the Victor Gonzalez trade, then went from the Dodgers to the Tigers in the Jack Flaherty trade. As far as the playoff rolls, Tigers would probably undo that one to have Jack Flaherty pitching today instead of an opener on Reese Olson. They could stick me at shortstop and have that work out. But Sweeney, definitely an interesting bat at the bottom of the lineup since we do have him today. 32-27, not a bad price at shortstop. Not the ideal way to fill shortstop on a slate like this with some superstar shortstops in play, but definitely capable at the significantly discounted price by comparison. Did hit the ball pretty hard, 44.3% hard hit, 7.6% barrels on the season. And then we saw Jake Rogers come through after I called him a home run or bust kind of a player yesterday. He dinked a little single into, I want to say, right field, and came away with a couple of ribbies and looked at least interesting enough. Capable of doing that on the right day. More of a home run or bust kind of a player. 197, 255, 352. 10 homers in 337 plate appearances. Did make good contact this year. Made good contact last year as well. So at least interesting from that perspective. And Brown, good as he was at limiting home runs, is not Framber Valdez when it comes to that. EB calling Baltimore to get swept for the second year in a row. Don't know how to win yet. Yeah, I think that team, they are still growing, obviously. A lot of those kids just got their first look in the show this year. They were a year early last year. So now this should have been their first bite at the apple, lose kind of year. So wouldn't shock me. Stephen Leibowitz saying the every other Wednesday plan. Every other Wednesday, sign up every other Wednesday at rotoscouts? I could put an every other Wednesday plan on there if that's what you want. If you get on the every other Wednesday plan, it will cost you, we'll come up with a creative price just to have a weird one in there. There's no way in hell I'm adding anything right now. It's such a pain in the ass to go back and create those new little graphics. AJ, right now, no. Ownership numbers, no. That's something I've never really cracked. I've always used available ownership numbers from various sites. Typically, whoever's optimizer I'm using is whoever's ownership numbers I'm using. There's a lot of places where you can subscribe, and what I didn't really want to do was something where it's just I'll just aggregate these three. A lot of places do that, and then you're just sitting there, you're beholden to I really do think that there's 2 or 3 places that actually calculate their own ownership, and then everybody else is just kind of aggregating. And I didn't want to do that. While it's a critical piece, and I do talk about it on shows, I do tend to think that it's available enough that it doesn't really matter. But yeah, that is something that one day I do hope to include it. And if it's something that people definitely are banging on the door to have, I'll get it figured out. It's just something that was so available for me that I never spent the time on truly trying to crack, and I just don't have the back data to put a model together and then test it. So it's kind of something that would be through a season, like a beta version. To a degree, there's a if I'm going to be asking people for money for things, even $1 a day, I got to have confidence in it myself. So if it's something brand new, outside of hey, I put this together that reflects in a new way the data that we've always had from the home run model, let's say, something like that. That's different because the data is still proven than if I'm just saying, hey, I slapped together this new ownership model. I think it'll work. It looks like on these 2 slates it did. It gets a little bit I think it's the exact same. It gets a little bit dicey doing that. 106 Mountcastle 7. So that's another reason I don't just drop it in and say I'm going to spin one up mid-season. Also just a bit of a cost benefit thing as far as time and effort. But yeah, it's always been something lurking in the back of the mind, and honestly, I'd love to see if I can improve on what's available out there because I think there are ways to improve. It's just the best way to improve it right now that I've been able to find is literally me sitting there going man by man, going, well, that one doesn't quite make sense. Let me give him another 3 points of ownership. And to refine it at that level manually every day would be just completely fucking bonkers. So, not right now is the short answer. Good question, though. I don't know. Fromber was 50% owned yesterday. Would have faded. Yeah, that's a beefy ownership spot for sure. Yeah, I do try and talk about popularity a little bit. Just kind of looking at the publicly available numbers without giving them away. And right now, by far, Hunter Brown and Joe Musgrove are the top 2 owned pitchers on DraftKings. They're approaching that kind of territory, and then everybody else is like half that. Pretty even mix, though, across the everybody else of it. Battle Axe says, help, this is my first year doing Roto Fantasy Baseball League, and I was 0.5 out of first with 3 players left. Cleveland versus Houston game being canceled screwed me. Am I wrong for being pissed off? I mean, you're not wrong for being pissed. I'd be pissed if I was in that situation, but it's within the rules. It's within, the outcomes of baseball. At the end of a baseball season, if a makeup game doesn't count, they do scrap the game. So, has happened before, will happen again, but that's a shitty way to lose in your first season. Hopefully you enjoyed it the rest of the way, though. I am a big fan of season-long Roto, as probably is pretty obvious to people out there. So hopefully you enjoyed it, Battle Axe, but brutal way to lose the first season, man. That sucks. Also got screwed over poor Jose Ramirez in his shot to go 40-40-40. Yeah, as Lone Wolf points out, other guys who offer ownership projections charge 10 times more. Yeah, everything at rotoscouts under $1 a day, trying to keep it reasonable. And if I crack ownership, it'll be in there for the same within that same price threshold. So we'll only get better. And and with everything, let this stand for everything that we do here. If somebody out there has a good idea, if somebody out there has a good way of doing these things, reach out to me. If you've got something you want to do for the site, reach out to me. Right now, I'm not, offering jobs, but if you want to get involved, if you want to get your name out there in the industry, write a little column or something like that, put together numbers, help with hockey. I'm actively looking for somebody to help with hockey lines. So if you're at all interested, or just if you've got like hey, this is how I do ownership on my own, and I think it might work for you, sir, suggesting like that, I am all ears. I by no means think that I have this whole thing figured out and wired myself. I learned a ton from talking to and working with people over the years, and to me, that's the best way to do this. And it keeps it engaging. It keeps it the most fun. It keeps me active and trying to figure stuff out and develop new things. So keep ideas coming. Any ideas you guys got? Let's keep this thing rolling, though. Jose Altuve off the top, 52-34. Nice buy off at 3,400 at those prices. Second base. Best way on the slate probably to fill second base. 20 home runs, 22 stolen bases, 350 on base for the season, a 127 WRC+. Big upside if you're looking at individual player parlays for total base bets. Love Altuve in those categories, especially being driven by Tucker and Alvarez as a correlated scoring option for DFS purposes. Just with his ability to reach first base, in addition to all the things he does as an individual in another 2020 season, even with a bit of a dip in power, just with his correlated scoring ability, it's like Gleyber Torres' spot ahead of Judge and Soto. That's the best spot in baseball. This is probably the second best ahead of Tucker and Alvarez. Very, very good hitters behind him. They'll be opening the game against the lefty. That's obviously not a big issue for Altuve, and it is not a big issue, as I always point out when this team faces a southpaw. No issues, Tucker and Alvarez, lefty at all. Power, average, on base, everything holds up career-wise. So just fire away with those two guys. 15.9% strikeouts and 16.5% walks for Tucker over 339 chances. 15% strikeouts, 10.9% walks for Alvarez over 635. 23 home runs, 11 steals for Tucker, 35 and 6 for Alvarez. Two fantastic players. 10.32 in the home run model for Tucker. Alvarez a little further behind at 8.05.
but no real true daylight between those two guys. It's just gigantic left-handed upside from both of them. And again, no real diminishment with the lefty starting the game. I'm really not concerned. Jake's here, likes the Tigers and the Brewers. Dennis jumping into the chat. Have you thought about changing your name to something stupid that no one will understand? If you know, you know. I haven't thought about that quite yet, pal, but yeah, rotoscouts with a K sounds appealing. What I am absolutely certain of is, and I don't know when I'm going to do it because I don't want to do it the first 5 days after asking people to buy in at one price. But as soon as my first promo code goes live for maybe around Thanksgiving, maybe around Halloween, or maybe just if I decide I need to sell more plans, first promo code is absolutely going to be sarcastic with a K. So just bear that in mind. Outside of the top three, who are all superstar caliber, you get Alex Bregman, who's right there with his buddies, 4,800, 3,300, 26 home runs at third base, 260, 315, 453, a 193 ISO, 118 WRC+. Pretty damn solid season out of Alex Bregman. Still hits the ball very hard. Looked like a mess early in the season and kind of pulled everything together. 13.6% strikeouts and 6.9% walks. At the absolute least, you know you're buying quality plate appearances from Alex Bregman basically every time he's up there. You know you're buying a very, very good shot at putting bat on ball every time he's up there. On a small slate, at the end of the day, sometimes that's all it takes. How much am I spending for the quality of plate appearances that I'm getting? Am I getting somebody who's up there flailing, or am I getting somebody who's going to give me a shot at 4 pieces of contact that might turn into a productive scoring event? And that's really all this boils down to. Jainer Diaz, 4,100, 3,000. Fantastic catcher option where you need the position. Playable like a first baseman where you don't. You also have Caratini there. You can play them both on both sites together, because catcher and first base eligibility for those two players on the DraftKings slate. Love Caratini. Been talking about him throughout. Those two players back-to-back together, most people would probably be inclined to skip one. I have no issues grabbing them both in a subset of lineups for the Astros. They're both good enough. Diaz can set the table for Caratini to clear the bases. Caratini, a little bit more of a hard-hitting bat. I shouldn't say that because Diaz came in at a 46.9. They're both hard-hitting bats. Caratini probably a little bit more home run power focused, where Diaz a little bit more of a driver of the ball. 16 home runs in 619 for Diaz, 8 home runs in a little bit less than half of that for Caratini, hopefully to support that point a little bit. But both guys, very low strikeout, tons of high quality bat on ball, well above 40% hard hits each of the last few years, and both catcher eligible for fair prices, 41 and 26. So you can go, if you're just looking at one of them in a lineup and you're just looking at the catcher spot, you can play the price game all day long with those two different price points and know that you're coming away with a solid bat either way. Definitely interesting. Jeremy Pena, solid mix and match, 41-28, 15 home runs, 20 steals. Not the ideal shortstop, but on a short slate like this and priced down by comparison to the Stars, definitely in play. 100 on the nose for WRC+. Hayward, just a mixer in the outfield, 41.3% hard hits, 10 home runs, a 202 ISO on the season. And then Chas McCormick in the starting lineup had a big pinch hit plate appearance yesterday. 5 home runs, 8 steals for McCormick. A low-end season, over 267 plate appearances. He missed most of the year. He's very, very cheap for a guy that we used to really target down at the bottom of the lineup. Had a big breakout season last year. If you don't remember, last season, over 457 plate appearances. Chas McCormick took a huge step forward. 22 home runs, 19 steals, a 216 ISO, had a 133 WRC+, 273, 353, 489 in that over last year. It was a monster step forward for a player who had been one of those just, hey, this guy's cheap, he's down lineup, and he puts good bat on ball. You can sneak him into some Astro stacks when other people don't. He was that kind of player going into 2023. And last year he became everybody's favorite in that role, and then just cratered this year for when we had him available at all. I think that puts him back in probably under-owned, kind of interesting down the lineup territory. An effective but not necessarily great wraparound option considering the medium to low on-base percentage. 271, pretty bad on base. but definitely an upside play from the bottom. He's kind of in the vein of, you know, the Tyrone Taylors and Harrison Baders of the world. In a lot of ways, last year and the 2 years prior, I would have said Harrison Bader and Tyrone Taylor are a lot like Chas McCormick. It's kind of the other way around now. Man, ranking these is so tough. I got to go Astros bats on top, but then it's Hunter Brown right after them. And then the Tigers bats. All three of those things kind of lumped up toward the top together. But the Astros, considering how they're offset a little bit with those run totals, and that can be deceptive too. You know, we're talking about this being a higher run total than, you know, say that or this. And it is, but it's not like this is up at 5 or even in the high 4s. It's still a low 4 run total. When we're talking about half a run difference, it's really, really negligible as far as the opportunity goes. So bear that in mind. But I'll give the edge to the Astros. Astros bats, followed by Hunter Brown, followed by Tigers bats. Actually, nah, I can't. I, for sanity's sake, I can't. Not that I love the idea that like somebody out there is keeping tabs and going to give me a score on these things at the end of the year. But yeah, Astros, Brown, Tigers, and then Olsen. Olsen would be the way to go as far as the Tigers pitcher. I don't think the opener's cheap enough in the 6,000s. KC and Baltimore. If you saw our pal Adam Scherer from over at the formerly awesome site, he's formerly from over there as well. Pretty killer seats at the Baltimore game that he was tweeting pictures of yesterday. Right down front. Jason Davis looking at Eflin over Musgrove. I tell you what, Eflin comes in at a good price. He's reasonable as far as a strikeout to walk ratio pitcher. He's not a bad pitcher. He's not a super high-end DFS talent. And he's going up against a really good Kansas City lineup that is exceptionally good at limiting strikeouts. But with a pitcher where, you know, give me 6 clean, give me 5 and a change effective innings here on a short slate as a $7,500 option on DraftKings, you can do worse. I wouldn't feel bad with Eflin in my lineup and a higher-end stack on FanDuel at 87. Definitely more purchasing power than going to Lugo against an equally dangerous Orioles team in a home game in a must-win spot. So, at worst, I'd say there's not that much daylight between Eflin and Lugo. They're separated by 2.5 points of fantasy point projection on the FanDuel scale. That amounts to less than a strikeout. I think it's the correct projection, but ceiling's probably about the same. For the season, Eflin 28 starts. Very good 3.59 ERA with not all that dissimilar 3.81 xFIP underneath it. A terrific microscopic 3.5% walk rate. Very, very good at limiting opportunities for opposing offenses. And for a team like Kansas City, that's part of their nature, is sequencing. They do have a little bit of power in the lineup this year, a little bit more than in other years. But there's a lot that goes into just sequencing, base hits, next man up, move the runners over kind of offense still with Kansas City. And if Eflin's not going to give you free passes, this team, for one thing, not great at drawing free passes. As good as they are at sequencing, it's more through hits than it is through walks. Only one double-digit walk rate in that whole lineup, and that's Yuli Gurriel in a short sample. Yuli and Corbin Burns had a very good duel yesterday in a plate appearance. So, Eflin, as far as aligning against this team, you can do worse matchups-wise when it comes to your low strikeout pitchers. Obviously, I'd rather have even a shakier runs pitcher, shakier home run pitcher, shakier walks pitcher, if I could exchange that for, 5-6 more points of strikeout. But I'll take what I can get for these prices. Is definitely not bad. Fits into the DraftKings paradigm very nicely. I'm sure he's going to be popular over there. He is not popular over there. That's shocking. This cannot be correct. Going to give him the chance on a reload here. 121. We've got a 2:32 start time. So we're doing okay despite taking like 45 minutes on that first game. Wow. All right, so they've got, and when I say they, it's RG. And if you guys want to talk amongst yourselves about other ownership numbers, go for it. They've got Lugo and Eflin essentially tied, offset by a little chunk of points from the three guys in the middle, and then Musgrove and Brown up top, and then the Detroit guys at irrelevant ownership numbers. I seriously question the idea that Frankie Montas at 72 would be more popular than Eflin at 75. $8,700 max, I think, makes sense, but maybe not by as much separation. They're giving it like 7-8 points of separation. I think it makes sense that he'd be more popular as like an SP1 more, but maybe not by that much. Manaya at 82, believably the highest owned on that next tier down, and I think that holds. I think that's correct. But I'm really curious that Eflin and Lugo, a little bit more offset at the bottom of that group than I think it ought to be. They'd probably all should be in the low 20 kind of range. It's not a huge gap. We're talking about a few points of ownership. But I definitely expected Eflin to be significantly higher than that number, or a handful of points higher than that number. I gotta remember we're dealing with a 4-game slate. But yeah, highly playable. High danger spot, no question about it. 18.7% strikeout rate for the opposing Kansas City lineup. They've been good run creators throughout the season. In the top spot of their lineup, Michael Massey, 3,800, 2,800. Talked about him yesterday as far as being an interesting left-handed bat for putting bat on ball. Strikes out just 15.7% of the time, just a 4.2% walk rate. So you can see how that jibes with Eflin's numbers. Just comes down to getting these guys out on their balls in play. It's a BABIP kind of a showdown. But Massey, a quality lefty stick at second base, no question. 14 home runs and 356 plate appearances, a 190 ISO, 102 WRC+. Room for improvement, probably would have had a nicer season. 300 more plate appearances. I like him over 20 home runs. I like him over a 200 ISO. A lot to work with there. Bobby Witt, 62-45, one of the superstar shortstops on the slate, 32 homers, 31 steals, a 256 ISO. Absolutely work him into every lineup you can. 14.3% barrels, 48.1% hard hits, low strikeout, medium walk, 15 and 8% respectively. Just ridiculous. Vinny Pasquantino, another great shot at total bases as far as prop bets go. 19 home runs on the board, 262, 315, 446 for the season. Puts great bat on ball, 45.8% hard hits against 12.8% strikeouts, 7.2% walks. Took steps forward in basically every category this season, 108 WRC+. Comes in at 4,100 at first base on DraftKings, looked pretty fantastic. FanDuel increased his price by $1,100. He was the dead min yesterday. They were a little bit taken by surprise that he was on the roster. Got him up to a correct price. I had a ton of him yesterday. Didn't quite work out at that price. We'd go right back to the well with him at 3,100, though. Definitely going to have some on FanDuel today. Sal Perez, getting him and Vinny into the lineup is doable on both sides. Catcher and first base eligible on both. Obviously on FanDuel, you've got the util spot to work with there. You do have a three-way positional conflict with Yuli Gurriel, but he's the most expendable out of that group. He's just going to be okay for all of these games. You're just talking about maybe some veteran quality bat on ball skills, maybe the ability to draw some walks, get involved for correlated scoring. But Yuli's big scoring events are going to be few and far between. Pretty hard to come by on these slates. So we're going to be focused on Vinny and Sal at the first base spot, and you can split those guys pretty evenly and not worry about it too much. You can play shares of Yuli Gurriel. $25.24 is a uniquely cheap price for a 5-hitter in a good spot, with going to be some opportunities for him with those good on base skills ahead of him. So definitely an interesting bat for a cheap price. It's just greatly diminished by comparison to Vinny Pasquantino and Sal Perez at this point in his career. Sal came away with a 44.2% hard hit rate on 19.8% strikeouts, another low walk guy at 6.7% walks, but still had a very good 330 on base, had a 185 ISO, 115 WRC plus for the season, hit another 27 home runs. Monster power bat at the position, has been for years. MJ Melendez after Yuli in the lineup, very interesting lefty bat, 30,000, 2,500. talked about him basically every time he's been in the lineup through the season. Made good improvements. Cut his strikeouts from 28-2 to 25-1 this season. That's a monster step forward for this hitter. I believe that the walks will come back to life as he grows as a hitter. He was at 10-3 last year. Sacrificed some of it, bringing the strikeouts down. Now 7-8 this year. If you're losing some around the edge, it's going to affect both of those rates. But the walk probably easier for him to bring back once he learns to control the zone a little bit more. I'm more interested in just the hard hit rates, the barrels that he puts on the ball, the 17 home runs and 194 ISO and 451 plate appearances are very interesting to me. Just a really good bat. 85 WRC plus. He's got a lot of work to do. I say really good bat, I mean in the quality with which the bat strikes the ball. Not necessarily a good hitter. There's a very strong distinction. Like if we're talking football and I say somebody's a great wide receiver, that's just talking about the position and universal for everybody. But you could break even that down to, all right, there are guys who go over the middle and make things happen after they get the ball in their hands. There are guys who are deep threats down the field to get 3 looks a game. It's the same with baseball in terms of I can say, yeah, this guy's a good bat, and it might mean any number of things. Like, yeah, this guy's a good. If I say this guy's a good hitter, typically that'll mean he's going to give me good average. He's going to give me a medium to low strikeout rate, medium to low walk rate with bat on ball skills, put a lot of balls in play. If I say a guy's a good slugger, then we're talking more about power. MJ Melendez much more along the lines of a slugger than a hitter, as you can see from the 206, 273 in the front end of the slash line. That's probably never going to really come around. But as long as he can keep the strikeouts where they are, push the walk back to 10% and hit for power, he will have a job as a lefty power bat. Hunter Renfroe, 31-26, might be in danger of losing his job as a righty power bat. 424 pretty bad plate appearances this year, 15 homers, a 164 ISO, 92 WRC plus. At least he kept things reasonable in terms of strikeouts, 19.8% strikeouts. We can work with that. It means he's putting bat on ball a little bit at least. And once upon a time, he was a very fearsome righty power hitter. 80 home runs over the last 3 seasons, if memory serves, not including this year. So there is upside, any given slate upside. He's very, very cheap, but ultimately he amounts to just another outfielder. Kyle Isbell, very much just another outfielder, 27-24. Cheap, makes things work as a last man in, but that's really all he is most slates. 81 WRC plus, 8 homers, 11 steals. And then Michael Garcia at the bottom of the lineup definitely got involved yesterday, was frisky and interesting in Michael Garcia ways. Could come right back and do that again. He's very inconsistent, but he's got interesting attributes on the field. 37 steals despite a 281 on base tells me you're fast and you've got the ability to swipe bases. If you can manage to get on at, say, like a 320 clip, we're talking about 50 steals next year. He's got the ability to hit the ball very hard, as demonstrated by 42.6% hard hits this year, 50.6 in a different sample last year. He's very low strikeouts, 16.5%, 16.5%, 6.7% walk. There's a lot to like. It's just not really all come together. It's just a big lump of clay right now. But on the days where that clay starts to look like a sculpture, he gets really interesting really fast. And he's affordable and he fits in at second base. He also fills third base. Definitely a good way to go from the bottom of the lineup. Not the most reliable wraparound play in the world because of the on-base skills. But if he gets on, that works out very well. And the 37 steals feed that a little bit. I'm interested. I'm in the Michael Garcia business at the bottom of the lineup here. On the Orioles side, Gunnar Henderson at the top of the lineup, another superstar caliber shortstop. Little discount, $6,000 versus $6,200 for Witt, $39 versus $45 on FanDuel. Easily the runner up, let's say, behind Witt for the role at the top of the top shortstop. But I mean, they are very close competitors. 37 home runs for Gunnar, outdid Witt by 5. 21 steals, Witt beat him by 10. 364 on base to Witt's 389. Okay, 248 ISO versus the 256 that Witt put up. 155 versus 168 WRC plus. Witt got him in the average department, but Gunnar in his second year in the show, 281, 364, 529. Those are tremendous numbers. Absolutely fantastic. 719 plate appearances out of the kid. 53.9% hard hits. 22.1% Ks. All right, 10.8% walks to offset that. He's not as good as Witt in those categories, but absolutely mashes the ball. Seth Lugo, 206 2/3. I believe that's the innings leader in the American League this year. gave up just a 1.91% home run rate. That doesn't really collide well with the Orioles' power numbers in terms of their ability to hit home runs against. Lugo pitched to just a 10.7 degree average launch angle and 8% barrel rate. Did give up premium contact, 39% hard hits, 88.5 miles an hour of exit velo. We saw that burn Fromber a little bit, just well-struck balls on the wrong day, even at low trajectory, even on the ground, can get you. If they get through the infield, that's a problem. So Lugo has those days from time to time, and he's a little bit more gettable than the Frombers, the Logan Webbs of the world for power upside. Just wasn't necessarily this year. But some upside still shining through for the O's. Gunnar at a 9.97. Westberg, 6.97. Santander leading the team at 11.35 in the home run model. No suppressing his power this year. And then everybody else slowly diminishes after that. But I'm interested in the O's today. They project out well. They're one of the more highly projected individual teams. Project out decently for scoring. If people are interested in Lugo, I'm interested in taking the other side. I've been trying to get away with that all year long, and it hasn't really worked out that well. Lugo did pitch to a 3.0 ERA with a 3.83 xFIP on the season. The xFIP is the number that I think is the real number. That's still a decent number. That still makes you a solid 3-4 starter. The 3.0 ERA, though, is deceptive, and it rose throughout the second half of the year. He was pitching under 2 for the first half of the year, or for the first 10 starts or whatever. But he had an undeniably strong season, 21.7% Ks, 5.7% walks, just average in the strikeout department, but low walk, limiting as far as opportunities go. The Orioles are a little bit better at drawing walks. They've got a number of guys in the high single digits. That plays against a slightly higher walk rate if we're really trying to find needles in haystacks as far as justification goes. I think we could just go to Orioles bats on their general quality without finding needles, though. Westberg, 45.32 is very cheap in the infield, especially given the quality that we've seen from him. 447 plate appearances in. We're at 18 home runs, 216 ISO, 125 WRC+. Hit a ball yesterday that would have been out of, I believe it was 28 parks in the major leagues. Just this park wasn't one of them. Bridgeline, seriously, ever since I started betting 2 years ago, that's how I feel about sports. Took the love away, asking about things being rigged. Yeah, I mean, there's just so much money in the salaries that these players make these days that it would be like, how much would you have to get down at a variety of sports books to make enough money on a wager that it would be worthwhile to be able, that you'd give these millionaires enough to make it worthwhile for them to throw these games, right? Guys on $100 million contracts, right? It's just, what would you be offering them to throw the games? Back in 1918 with the Black Sox, when these guys were making $45 a season and pitching, 18 innings every 2 days, you can understand if a guy comes in and says, "Hey, you're making $8,000 for the season, which is a high salary compared to the average American in 1918. I'm making these numbers up. We'll give you $50,000." You can see how that, different world. I just don't think there's upside. As far as like the Jonte Porter of the world, a min salary player who has the ability to individually directly affect things intentionally, sure. If you had one relief pitcher, let's say a min salary reliever, on his own, or even as part of a conspiracy, that's the kind of maybe I could believe. But as far as like the game itself being rigged, like the sports books being in on it and a grand conspiracy, no. I don't think there's any way you actually could do that. For one, the challenge of just making it even work in baseball, just with the way things happen in baseball, it's just very difficult to do. So the execution would be difficult. The just ability to give the players something that would make it worthwhile for you to actually try and have that grand conspiracy wouldn't be doable, wouldn't be feasible. But yeah, the individual bad actor, and especially it would almost have to be a relief pitcher or like a minor league call up who just threw down huge prop bets on opposing hitters and then just threw a couple grapefruits up there. Right? If I'm the opposing pitcher I got called up for today, especially if I'm like a 38-year-old career AAA pitcher, and I know I'm the end of the line, yeah, maybe I throw in a couple of prop bets. Not me, I'm not saying maybe I do this, but that would be the way that you would get to a kind of a scandal. I think would be a guy like that. All right, I'm going to take last year's salary and put it on Francisco Lindor and Mark Vientos two-way home run prop. I could see something like that maybe cropping up every now and again. And before anybody asks, no, Shohei Ohtani was not betting on baseball. His interpreter was. Just like it looks like on the surface. That's all that happened there. Because if it was Ohtani, he would have been betting in Japan. Not here. That's the simplest explanation. He would not have gone to a California bookmaker who doesn't speak his language to make those bets. He wouldn't have done it through the intermediary. He would have just called back to Japan and said, hey guys, where he wouldn't get caught. Wouldn't have done it with somebody who's being investigated by the FBI. But anyway, let's get back into this thing. Going down continuing on at the Orioles lineup here, or diving into the Orioles lineup, whichever we were doing. We were talking about Gunnar. We talked about Westberg. Westberg, a great buy. Hit a ball that was out of like 28 ballparks yesterday. Good opportunity to come back with power today. 6.97 in the home run model. Fills 3 spots for 32 on FanDuel. Fills 2 spots for 45 on DraftKings. Highly interesting bat with a lot of power upside for the young player. 44 home runs from Anthony Santander this season. Very interesting bat from both sides of the plate. 11.7% barrels, 41.4% hard hits. Monster number in the power index today. Cowser at just 41, 31, 24 homers, a 204 ISO, a 120 WRC plus. Major power upside from him. 30% strikeouts, sure, could feed the upside for Seth Lugo, but a major power bat for such a cheap price on either site. I'm very interested in Cowser in my Orioles stacks. Adley Rutschman, 44-29, 19 homers, a 140 ISO, a 104 WRC plus. We know that the numbers diminished for a reason. He was injured and playing hurt through the back half of the season there. The price came down appropriately finally, so you can play him very aggressively in your Orioles stacks. He's a functional standalone catcher outside of Orioles stacks. I also like this O's team, by the way, just for the way that they stack up with some other teams, because you can get high-quality options in the infield or in the outfield with this team, where sometimes that's kind of the opposite with other teams. It's like, I want 3 outfielders off this team, but then if I put them together with other teams, I can't get one of the outfielders from the other team. The O's tend to offer a lot of options. The Royals are like that a lot as well. O'Hearn, 36-26, definitely an interesting bat. 15 home runs, a 163 ISO, a 119 WRC plus. Cheap for a guy with nearly a 40% hard hit this year. Had a 51.5 in a better year last year, 10.1% barrels. Was diminished a little bit, more like the old version of Ryan O'Hearn this season, but still better than that guy ever was. Still definitely an improved hitter. Lefty bat, not asked to do that much in this spot in the lineup. Definitely interesting down lineup. And part of an interesting, sneaky, good down lineup stack, honestly. If you started at 5 and went down through Ramon Urias, it would be a playable stack. That's a good group of hitters. If you start at, O'Hearn, if you start at Mountcastle and wrap around, there's a lot of ways to build with the Orioles because that's a full 9-man lineup. Mountcastle's good, 35-28, cheap for a guy with a lot of righty quality. 8.8% barrels, 45.2% hard hits this year. Diminished from a 12.1% barrel, 44.6% hard hits last year, 15% barrel, 45.8% hard hits the year before. So the hard hit rate stayed where it was. It's just the barrels that we lost. It's where some of his home run upside went. He finished with 13 in 507 plate appearances. You give him those barrels back, you give him his 115, 125 additional plate appearances. I love him to be in the 25 home run range. I think we get back there at some point. It's just mediocre overall. But on a short slate like this, that makes him highly playable down lineup. And he pairs well with O'Hearn. He pairs well with Adley in 3-mans. Pairs well with Cedric Mullins and Ramon Urias for an even sneakier, cheap one. Mullins at 42-26 has 18 home runs and 32 steals this year. 105 WRC plus. A good multi-category contributor for years now. Former 30-30 guy. Did have a good season. Despite being at 234, 305, 405, the counting stats are there over 499 chances. And then Ramon Urias, our guy that we talk about all the time as being a cheap, sneaky power bat whenever he's in the lineup. 23, fills 3 positions on FanDuel all at third base, second base, and first base is interesting. 11 home runs in 301 chances, had a 169 ISO this year, created runs 15% better than average. Looking back over time, last year, 396 plate appearances, just 4 homers, just a 111 ISO and 99 WRC+, but still got on at a 328 clip, still contributed a little bit that year, was just off league average for run creation. Year before was back into business, 16 home runs, a 166 ISO, a 104 WRC+. No one in the world is saying Ramon Urias is a superstar. What we are saying is that he's very interesting for DFS purposes because he's always under-owned, he's always affordable. Today he fills multiple positions, and he's got home run upside. He's got a good bat for doubles, a lot of quality contact, 8.7% barrels this year, solid hard hits and barrels 2 years ago. Ramon Urias is a good buy at a cheap price to make things work. Definitely one of the more interesting bats for that role. Yeah, all right. O's bats, Royals bats. I do like the O's. Orioles bats, Royals bats, Lugo, Eflin. But that is definitely four corners. That's as four corners as anything get. Those guys are on like the extreme edges of the curbs, standing like just over the sewers on all four corners, pointing at one another, yelling at one another, saying that they're the better option. And then like all the lights turn green and everybody just crashes in the middle of the intersection. It's that kind of a day. I don't know what the gun to my head option would even be. I really don't. I don't have an answer to that. I like all of these pieces. We've used all of these pieces through the year. Gun to my head, I would probably have to say I'll take the Orioles and I'll take one last shot at Seth Lugo. And I'll probably take the bullet. He's gotten it done. He's faded that all year long. Lugo's worst start of the season was a 7-run game against Minnesota back on August 13th. And then he had 2 5-run games, 3 5-run games, and a 6-run game out of the 33 starts. Everything else was pretty clean. Monster numbers of quality starts in here. If you're looking just at the quality start upside on FanDuel, let's say, I mean, you've got Max Fried to work with. You got like a lot of guys who pitch deep into games, but Lugo is definitely among the guys that are the more likely to give you a quality start here. Let's keep this thing rolling. We've got 2 more games to talk about. We've already been talking for an hour and 15 minutes. I was planning on getting out of here by 2. It's all right. Bob Jones asking, who's the chalk pitcher on FanDuel today? Since I was not necessarily completely correct about the ownership on DK, we can take a quick peek. Won't give the numbers away, obviously. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe if you get a chance. Check out rotoscouts.com. All of our memberships are up and running for you to access. Easy price plans. Everything's under $1 a day for full access. Every single sport. So when NBA starts up, you'll have NBA. I don't think that has any crossover with baseball season. If we get hockey running, though, by the time by next week, you'll have access to that if it's up there. That's going to be very much in beta form. I know I was talking just before about not wanting to put things up in beta form, but that'll go up with a little disclaimer. Hey, these are beta projections for now. But, yeah, every plan gets you access. So if you buy it weekly today, cover baseball for the rest of the next couple of days, covers you for, you get access to baseball today, baseball tomorrow, Friday, through the week. You get access for Showdown football tomorrow, football on Sunday, football on Monday, baseball every one of those days. And if, no promises, but if we have projections for opening day for hockey season, that's next Wednesday too, so you'll have that too. How about that? 3 sports for under $1 a day. No promises on that third one, though. This is not false advertising. This is saying if I can get my shit together enough, and if I can find somebody to handle the line changes for me, the line combos for me, then maybe. Doesn't look like we've got either of these lineups in yet. Let's see if we got them on underdog. Nope. So as far as pitching targets go, I was looking up those ownership numbers on FanDuel. Excuse me. Sorry about that. Come on. It's actually, it's not. And it makes sense. Thinking about the FanDuel board, probably could have landed on this if I had just gone like this. It's Hunter Brown, drawing the most popularity. It's a little bit of an offset price-wise from Musgrove and Fried. And facing Detroit, which obviously still tracks like a targetable matchup despite how well they've been playing. So he's actually the chalk of the day, offset by a few points over those guys. Over next two guys would be Manaea and Musgrove. Which again makes sense. Fried at 10-2 facing the low strikeout Padres. Falls a little bit further down in the public's estimation. That just makes Fried more interesting to me. It's just a high price to pay for him over there at 10-2. Anybody not in that? Actually, Lugo drops out. Anybody that's not Manaea or these top three is in the 10% or below range as far as ownership goes. So that makes Lugo and Eflin particularly interesting over there, given their talents. I like that game as one of the better offensive spots, like I said at the beginning of the show. But knowing that Lugo and Eflin are going into that game at single-digit ownership, potentially, if these guys are right. But even if they're wrong, it's probably not going to be 25% ownership. So that makes those guys appealing. Montas in this one, the next guy above that tier. For me, he'd be the lowest end pitcher. I really just don't like Frankie Montas. Maybe it's because he burnt the Yankees when they traded for him when they shouldn't have. Maybe it's just because he's really not that good. Never really has been. He's a Jose Berrios. He's an average pitcher who somehow got the reputation of being better than average. Look at this year, for example. 4.84 ERA, 4.26 xFIP, 22.6% strikeouts, 10.1% walks, 10.8% swinging strikes, 25.3% CSW, 3.66 home run rate, 42.3% hard hits, 89.3 on the exit velo, 9.2% barrels. There's a lot of ugly. There's a lot of bad in there. There's a lot that balances the bad into the average kind of territory, but there's nothing that really bounces him into the, hey, this guy's actually pretty good territory. Last year, limited inning and a third. Year before, a little bit better in terms of the strikeouts, 23-4. Slightly up, less than a point, though. 4.05 ERA at 3.61 xFIP. 7% walk rate is definitely better, 3 points better in the walk department. Was better for swinging strikes, but not really on the CSW department, so that just means he's getting more swinging strikes, and he lost that ability this year, so that's a diminishment. 1.25 whip that year versus a 1.37 this year. Gave up way less premium contact that year. Slipped in that department this season. Just a pitcher I don't like going up against a very high-quality Mets lineup that I like quite a bit. That aligns well for him against him for power. That is good at drawing walks. That should be able to exploit his high walk rate. Look at there's multiple double-digit walk rates here. A couple guys in the high 8s. There are strikeouts there for Montas, but there's also a couple of high-danger bats at low strikeout rates there. Down the stretch, Montas did have, going back 3 starts. If you were here that day, you'll know which start I'm talking about. 5 2/3 against Philly. 3 earned runs, gave up 2 home runs. He walked 2. He went 5 2/3. Lost the game, did not get the quality start, but struck out 10. Much to my chagrin when I said I didn't like him for more than, I think it was 6.5. But that was the only good thing about that game. He had a 10 strikeout game that day. He had another 10 strikeout game against the Rockies on September 6th. So in September, he did have 2 10 strikeout games, and then against the Giants in between those two, he had an 8 strikeout game that was another clean game. That was 3 decent starts in a row. He gave up 3 against the Rockies over 6, none against the Giants over 6, and then 3 against the Phils over 5 2/3. Melted down after that against Arizona. 7 earned runs, 8 runs total on 6 hits over just 2 2/3. 4 strikeouts, 2 walks, allowed 3 home runs, and then came back, went just 4 innings in his last start of the year against this Mets team. 6 strikeouts, 3 walks, 2 earned runs on 2 hits, including a home run. So if you're doing the math at home, that's 6 home runs in his last 3 starts of the year over, what's that, 12 1/3 innings? It's a lot of home runs. To me, he's a target for bats. In a full portfolio of lineups, you absolutely put some Frankie Montas in your lineups. I think the only spot that's not necessarily playable in a full portfolio lineups is that Detroit opener. Reese Olson would be included in that slate for me. Montas would be included, but those would be the two lowest end options. And I think I would prefer Olson to Montas, honestly. Sean Manaea is a good target on the mound. Very solid projection on both sides. 8,200, great buy on DraftKings. 9,100, definitely worth getting to on FanDuel. Nearly a 25% strikeout rate, over 181 and 2/3, 3.47 ERA with a 4.04 xFIP, 11.7% swinging strike rate, 27.6% CSW, a solid 1.08 WHIP, kept hitters to under 3% home runs despite being a fairly fly ball oriented pitcher. Definitely interesting. Had some good starts down the stretch too. Bad one against these Brewers in his last outing. Is that the same game? That was the same game. He and Montas faced one another in that game last week. So in that game, for his side, Manaea went just 3 2/3, gave up 5 earned runs, 6 runs total on 7 hits, struck out just 1, walked 2, gave up a homer. Game before that, he went 7, got the win against Philly, quality start. Did give up 3 runs, but only on 3 hits, 2 home runs, so two mistakes in there. Struck out 6, walked 0. A 6 strikeout, 7 inning, 1 run start against Washington. 6 2/3, 6 2/3, 7 innings, 6 2/3, 2 7-inning starts prior to that. Had been on a very, very strong run of depth and quality that we broke down on a show last week before that meltdown start, in fact. I think you go right back to the well. Hopefully, I would hope that maybe a little bit of bad feelings from last week's start against this team scares a couple people away who should otherwise be rostering him, and maybe he slips by a fraction of a point lower owned than he ought to be, but definitely a high upside pitcher with a lot of appeal for these prices. Still nothing on lineups on this one. Taking a look, Mets lineup, Frankie Lindor off the top, 57-42, well worth it, 32 home runs, 29 steals, playing with a hurt back, but has been not really overly affected by it while he's on the field, so definitely going back there. Plays up just as well as the other superstar shortstops. You just take your pick and rotate through those options in an abundance of lineups. Whoever's in the stack, but on FanDuel where you can get 2 of them, I love the combination, putting 2 of those superstar shortstops into a lineup just because of how price prohibitive it is, and because I feel like that just tends to be an under-owned construction, doubling up shortstop at the util spot. So I think going Lindor-Witt, going Lindor-Gunnar, Witt-Gunnar in a game stacks of that game, I think it makes sense, even if you're taking it as a one-off. Just depends on what you can pay for otherwise, obviously. It's a very high price proposition. Jose Iglesias, 4,000, 2,500, presumably going to be right back in this spot in their lineup, has been a catalyst for this team. There's no other way to put it. 140 WRC plus for the season, 341, 387, 456. Not a good hitter, but an interesting hitter this year. Been low strikeout, putting a ton of balls in play and getting away with it. A lot of luck-based output, but it's there. And as long as he's going to be in that spot, there's potential for correlated scoring, which is the name of the game here. Brendan Nimmo, lefty bat, 4,500, 3,400, 22 homers, 15 steals, 172 ISO. Reasonable play here. 4,400, 3,000 for Mark Vientos. He's got 27 homers, a 251 ISO, a 135 WRC plus. Love the upside for power. Still very cheap on DraftKings. Still now cheap on FanDuel as well. First and third base eligible. Love the option. Pete Alonso, 47-33, has a 9.24, just behind Vientos and Lindor in the home run model. You could easily have put Pete at the top spot. He had 34 this year, 222 ISO, one of the best power hitters in baseball over the last few seasons. Jesse Winker, if he's back in the lineup, is definitely playable despite a bad slump to end the season. Had a decent year, 360 on base, sees a ton of pitches, great skills, great eye at the plate, good ability to draw walks, get himself to first base. Regardless of anything else going on with Winker, he's a good correlated scoring option. Had a 118 WRC plus this year. Also put up 14 homers and 14 steals, so he can fill DFS counting stats. Starlin Marte at 39, 27, 7 homers, 16 stolen bases on the year. Another solid season out of him. Not spectacular, but solid. A 102 WRC plus. Still hits the ball hard. 42.8% hard hits, just 21.6% strikeouts. Tyrone Taylor, a mix and match quality outfielder who puts up good at bats, has a lot of skills, a lot of raw ability, 7 home runs and 10 steals, and just a very solid athlete. So a guy who can make things happen through hustle and just beating out a ground ball for a base hit and things like that on the field. Just really a solid bat for a cheap price. He was the example I threw into that Chas McCormick conversation before. Frankie Alvarez at 32-26, 11 home runs, a 164 ISO to round out his season. It was a okay year, kind of a lost half of a season for the young player. Lots and lots of upside, lots of power upside from the catcher. If the Brewers come back looking something like this, I think Jackson Chourio is super interesting. Another player who's very interesting for total bases props. Love the upside for power, a 7.19 in the home run model against a gettable Sean Manaea. Definitely plays well for a player that was like the 3rd best player in baseball in the second half of the season. He was very, very good. Finished at a 189 ISO, 117 WRC+, had a 2020 season as a 20-year-old rookie. Garrett Mitchell, 37% hard hits, 8.7% barrels over 224 plate appearances, 8 home runs, 11 steals, a 342 on base, a 126 WRC+, 200 plus ISO. Very interesting bat for just 3,600, 2,800. It's not a full season's worth of results, but that's very encouraging for upside. William Contreras was involved yesterday, always involved in this team's offense, a 131 WRC+, one of the top catcher bats in all of baseball. Phil's catcher for 49 on DraftKings, presumably hitting 3rd again, 3,500 on FanDuel. You can play him like he's a first baseman on the FanDuel slate. Love the bat. Definitely the best way to fill catcher on the DraftKings slate. Willy Adames at just 4,600 is ridiculously low priced and continues to be. They should just move him up to 5,000 tomorrow and get it over with. 32 home runs, 21 steals, a 211 ISO, a 119 WRC+. Absolutely, Willy Adames is in that mix of you should have shares of him with Frankie Lindor and Bobby Witt and Gunnar and so on and so forth. He's earned that. He has been just as good as those guys this year. Comes a lot cheaper than all of them. Reese Hoskins, 4,000, 3,000, 26 home runs on the year, a 205 ISO. Solid right-handed power bat to throw at the lefty. 12.7% barrels, 41.9% hard hits from Hoskins. That's what he does. That's what he's paid to do. Gary Sanchez, interesting bat if he makes the lineup. Plays a lot against lefties. Never, ever has stopped hitting the ball hard. You want Gary Sanchez in your lineups if he's in the lineup for the Brewers today. He is a home run hitter. He's not good for anything else. High strikeout. He's okay at drawing walks. He's always been decent at that, but not a good correlated scoring play. It's a home run or bust kind of a play. But Gary Sanchez mashes the ball and always has. Never, even in his bad years, even when he got run out of New York, even when he got run out of other towns, never stopped hitting the ball hard. Never stopped piling up home runs when he's given opportunities. It's just that he's bad at everything else, including actually catching. Sal Frelick, 2,800, 2,500, 2 homers, 18 steals, more of a table setter. Reasonable speed option, reasonable ability to get to first base and make things happen. Finished with just an 86 WRC plus to reflect the inconsistency, though. He is a low strikeout balls in play player. Joey Ortiz got to a 104 WRC plus at the end of the season, finished with 11 homers, 11 steals, mix and match quality at multiple infield spots on FanDuel. Less appealing for 32 at third base on DraftKings, but easily playable for that money over there. And then Bryce Terang at the bottom of the lineup against the lefty, 41, 3,000. Diminished greatly lefty-lefty for what that's worth. 7 home runs and 50 steals. He's more of a table setter. You could probably still get away with wrapping him around even against the lefty. Mets bats. Brewers bats, Mets bats, Brewers bats, Manaea, Montas. And for me, Montas is really low end. Manaea is like way higher. But I think I lean bats here. Slightly. Last game up, which is good because it's 2 o'clock and I still got to build some lineups for this slate that starts in 32 minutes. Power's dropping some numbers into the chat there with some ownership, I think. Mamba likes the Padres home run upside. Hey, nice, Mamba. Mamba says, popping in, thank you for recommending Barrios the other day. Took him home $5K with that Miami stack against him. Should have won $50K, but didn't have enough time on to change all my ownership on Marlins players. Look, I think I put that with a heavy dose of this is because he's not popular against the Marlins. Pitcher that I don't like at all. We talk badly about all year long. I'm glad you got there, buddy. Sharp play by you. No lineups for this one yet. The nightcap, 8:40 start time on this one, or 8:38. Max Fried, tremendous option. 8,700, very, very cheap from Maxi. 10-2 on FanDuel. I like the option there, where he's going to slip by a little bit lower owned than Joe Musgrove, a little bit lower owned than the other premium pitchers. It's a tough spot. 18% strikeouts for the Padres. Very, very challenging team. They put a ton of balls in play. They're very good at sequencing. They're very good for some mid-grade power and stolen base upside. They've been one of the best teams in baseball in the second half of the season for a reason. But Max Fried's really good, guys. 23.2% strikeout rate over 174 this year in 29 starts. Limited home runs to just 1.82%. So that's kind of, for me, why I don't really like the Padres as a power option today. You can see the impact that Max is having on those home run numbers. All right, look at the home run model. Even your Fernando Tatis number is just over halfway to the magic number. Even Manny Machado not reaching halfway. Max is not a great target for home runs against. He's very good at inducing weak and medium contact, 34.5% hard hits, 86.3 miles an hour of exit velo, 5% barrels, and that comes on top of a 3-degree average launch, right? So most of the time, like Fromber, let's say, we're talking about a guy with a super low degree average launch, but I'm always saying, yeah, guys hit the ball against him hard, but it's on the ground, so as long as it's not like a liner through the infield, like who cares? That's not even the case with Max. Max is inducing weak ground balls, and has done. This is a trait for Max Fried. This year, last year, the year before. This is ongoing. Last year was a short season, 14 starts, 77 2/3, but that's a half a season. That's not nothing. Year before was a full season. 2 years ago, we were at 1.64% home runs on 31.9% hard hits, 86 miles an hour of exit velo, 4% barrels, 7.6 degrees launch, 225% home runs, 86 miles an hour of exit velo, 86.5, 32.7% hard hits, 4.8 degree average launch, 3.8% barrels last year. And again, this year's numbers. Max Fried is very, very good at limiting power. The strikeouts come and go. That's where he's a little bit more challenged at this price to find a true ceiling by comparison to some of these other guys. Last time out, though, he faced the low strikeout Royals, 8 2/3, and this is the example of what Max does very well. A lot of the times he's going to chase 7-inning starts. He's going to chase complete games. He's just good at doing that. 2 complete games on the year, I believe. Yeah, 2 complete games this season. Also an 8-inning start. Multiple 7-inning starts. 2 8-inning starts. His last start of the year, this one against Kansas City that I was about to bring up, on the last day of the year, or not the last day of the year, his last start of the year, 8 2/3, faced 30 hitters, 9 strikeouts against Kansas City, 3 hits, 2 walks, no runs. It's a phenomenal start. That's a good comp team for this Padres team, too. Max could absolutely go out there and have a day like that today. That is in the cards. And I tell you what, this Braves pitching staff could use a blow, so that could definitely help them if he could manage to go deep. They're not going to really want him to because you're going to want him to be able to bring him back in the next series, but 6 is easily on the board for Max. 7 is probably on the board. So despite the high price, the fact that that lowers the ownership makes him appealing. On the other side, Joe Musgrove just looks good. He's going to be very popular on both sites. He's getting a lot of buzz. 8,000 is a fantastic price on DraftKings for this matchup against the Braves. Braves do have power, but they've also got Ks in this lineup. As we've talked about a bunch of times already, this is a deceptive number. Don't forget that. That's lowered by Ozzie, who is a very good player but having a very bad year, and then Gio Urshela, who's just not a good hitter but is low strikeout. All the hitters that you actually worry about through the middle here, that totals to a 26.2% strikeout rate. So there are Ks in this lineup. Musgrove's good at finding them. 3.88 ERA with a 3.74 xFIP, just walked 5.6 this year. Struck out nearly 25% over 99 2/3 in 19 starts. 24.3% in a similar sample last year. 24.9 in a larger sample 2 years ago. So just a matter of being able to stay on the mound for just Joe Musgrove, but when he's out there, he's still very good. He's still very effective. Last time out against the Dodgers, a very good low strikeout team. 6 strikeouts, 2 earned runs with a home run allowed on 5 hits. 6 1/3, though, against the Dodgers. Pretty solid start. 9 strikeouts against the White Sox, but that's the White Sox. That was over 6. No runs, 4 hits. Also shut out the Giants over 6. 3-hitter, 8 strikeouts in that one. So 3 very good starts to round out his year. Love the upside for Joe Musgrove. Definitely a dangerous spot, though. There are bats to tangle with there. Marcell Ozuna, Ozzie Albies, even in a bad season, I'm never going to write off. So it's not a safe spot for Musgrove, but there's ceiling there for sure. If you're looking at Braves bats, Michael Harris from the top, 49, 29 across sites, definitely appealing there. Ozzie Albies at 47.33 has appeal. I'm just realizing that I don't have any lineups built yet, but that's okay. We can do it in a hurry. Harris at 49.29, 16 home runs, 10 steals, a 157 ISO, dead at league average for run creation this season, but definitely an appealing player who finished the season strong and is carrying a 10% barrel, 46.6% hard hits that aligns directly to those last 2 years of contact numbers. So over a longer season, over a more complete season, I like him to get over 2020 and so on and so forth. A very good, very interesting multi-category contributor. Ozzie Albies, tremendous year last year. Diminished year this year, 33 homers, a 513 slug, a 233 ISO, and a 124 WRC plus last year. Everything cratered, and he missed a lot of time this year, but he's been a very good option at second base for several seasons now. No issues going to Ozzie at 47.33. The price is just diminished for the performance this year. 51.37 is very reasonable for Ozuna with his 39 home runs, his 247 ISO. Same thing for 5,030-200 for Matt Olson with 29 homers and a 213. Those are two monster power bats. If anybody's going to ruin Joe Musgrove's day, it's those two guys. Really like that power combo. Double-digit barrel rates, massive hard hit rates. Both guys exactly at 24.6% strikeouts, but offset by walks. Jorge Soler, Ramon Laureano, another pair of guys who hit the ball extremely hard. Both guys in the 12s for barrel rate on the season. Laureano came away with 10 home runs, 8 steals. Definitely an interesting player. Was ready to write him off basically for the rest of his life as a major leaguer, but came kind of roaring back over 300 plate appearances this year of quality. 21 homers for Soler is a disappointing output, but a 199 ISO, reasonable contact. Definitely some ability to continue drawing walks and get on base as a correlated scorer at worst, and has looked a little bit better as far as bat on ball of late. Travis d'Arnaud, if he's in the lineup, or Sean Murphy, they're essentially interchangeable as good power hitting catchers. Either one of them is in play for all the same reasons. They're just good at hitting home runs for cheap from the catcher spot. Urshela, not really a bat, mix and match quality to the absolute outside, and you really don't even want him for that. Orlando Arcia, the more interesting bat down lineup, but very ineffectual. 17 home runs, but a lot of low quality plate appearances this year. 73 WRC plus, 272 on base percentage. From the Padres side, I really don't like attacking Max Fried. He's a pitcher I don't love tangling with for all those reasons I highlighted about just his ability to limit to induce weak and medium, limit hard hits, limit home runs, limit sequencing. I really don't love targeting Max, but if you're going to do it, Luis Ariz is in play off the top, and that's probably an ideal guy to throw at Max, just given the the low strikeout, low walk nature of the player. You're throwing extreme light contact against a guy who's looking to induce medium contact. So if you're going to allow Luis Ariz to plant the ball where he wants to, he's quite good at just dropping those balls into the outfield and getting base hits. So maybe you get 3-hit day out of Luis Ariz and you get correlated scoring opportunities, but then his friends have to come through. Fernando Tatis at 56.43 is very expensive for a matchup against Max, where he comes through only halfway to the magic number in the power index. Fantastic home run hitter, 21 homers, 11 steals, monumental upside on any given slate, even against Max. Upside against the bullpen later in the game. But a challenging situation for Tatis to really make value today against this pitcher. Jurickson Profar, on the other hand, is still very, very cheap on DraftKings at 42, so he might make value, but getting to upside, getting to ceiling is challenging. At 36 on FanDuel, he's correctly priced, and it's a lot more problematic. 24 homers, 10 steals, a 179 ISO, 139 WRC+. Manny Machado, 55.36 is interesting. 29 homers, 11 steals out of Manny. 197 ISO, a 122 WRC plus at third base. 5,500, 3,600, absolutely your definite fourth man in off the top. Really, the second man in. It's 1, 2, and then go from there. But Manny's always going to be interesting. Sub 20% strikeouts, all this good premium contact. Xander Bogaerts, 40,000, 2,900, 11 homers, 13 steals, and 95 WRC+. Plus. At worst, still a solid veteran mix and match play, low strikeout, a lot of balls in play. Just a diminished year, missed a lot of time this season. Jackson Merrill, tremendous rookie season, 46.33 is absolutely reasonable for him, downright cheap, honestly. 11.3% barrels, 24 home runs, 16 steals, 208 ISO, 130 WRC+. Plus. You just want Jackson Merrill shares, even lefty-lefty, but again, a very challenging spot for all of these Padres to find that upside today. Solano, good line drive hitter, another guy that maybe, with medium strikeout nature, line drives and balls in play are the name of his game. So maybe he's an interesting bat to throw at Max for a lower end opportunity for sequencing and hits. If that's what you're looking for, Solano can deliver that. Cronenworth at 36.29, mix and match quality, 17 homers, a 105 WRC+. Plus. Higgy, a home run yesterday, 17 on the season, 256 ISO. Monster power bat, but again, Max really not bad for allowing that power. So limited option for Higgy at the bottom today. That's our slate, gang. one last look at the board here, pitching wise. Those are your numbers. Memorize them, screenshot them, whatever you got to do to beat the paywall if you want to. We'll solve that at some point. I'll go back to the colored bubbles. But for now, I'm just showing the numbers because it's easier. Here's your home run board. I'm not going to do the full breakdown just in the interest of time. I got to get some quick lineups built, and I got to get the site updated. There's your home run board. Love the upside for Santander. Love the power for the Mets again. Mets and O's are a very compelling stack combination. Brewers are an interesting mix. I like that game for upside on both sides. That would be the game to target for offensive upside, in my opinion. KC and Baltimore would be the second most appealing game for offensive upside. That last game with the lowest total is the one I'm not all that interested in for offense, but you could obviously get there with either of those teams. Tigers are going to be interesting too. And with that, I will bid you guys a fond afternoon. Appreciate you guys. Hit the like button on your way out the door if you didn't already. Check out rotoscouts.com. Our plans are all under $1 a day. Pick your pick your term, weekly, monthly, quarterly, and go from there. They're all the same. They're all inclusive. You just get a little bit of a price discount if you go for the bigger terms. That's about it. You guys absolutely rock. Good luck out there. Somebody go win something. I'll see you later.